20% of global oil travels through this 21-mile gap, making the Strait of Hormuz the most critical maritime flashpoint. The U.S. strategy enforces a massive naval blockade here, physically obstructing trade routes to exert economic pressure and force a change in Iranian policy. This is a massive commitment of military hardware. U.S. Central Command currently maintains a fleet of warships and aircraft carriers in the region to ensure that their presence and their firepower is constant. This naval buildup is supported by increasingly aggressive rhetoric from the White House. The administration has claimed unilateral authority over the strait, signaling a willingness to push the standoff toward a direct military confrontation. But the blockade is failing its primary objective. Iran has not surrendered, and the restricted flow of energy has instead pushed global oil prices as high as $120 a barrel. Tehran is neutralizing the blockade by shifting trade east. Instead of vulnerable sea lanes, Iran is building secure overland corridors connecting their oil fields to China. They are also moving north, transporting oil via rail to the Caspian Sea and into Russian territory. From there, Moscow handles the final distribution to the global market. The U.S. has spent roughly $25 billion attempting to isolate the Iranian economy, yet Tehran's trade remains operational through these northern and eastern routes. A maritime blockade quickly loses its strategic value when an adversary is no longer tethered to the sea. Iran's integration into this Eurasian land-based trade network has made the U.S. naval presence largely obsolete. As the effectiveness of economic sanctions diminishes, U.S. military planners are shifting focus toward direct kinetic strikes against Iranian infrastructure. CENTCOM is now seeking approval to deploy Dark Eagle hypersonic missiles to the Middle East. These weapons travel fast enough to hit Iranian ballistic missile launchers that are currently deep enough inland to be out of range for conventional U.S. systems. However, the stockpile for these weapons is extremely small. Each individual Dark Eagle missile costs roughly $15 million, putting a severe financial and logistical cap on any sustained bombing campaign. Iran is responding with its own naval escalation. They have deployed a new, classified weapon system into the Persian Gulf, positioning it specifically to counter U.S. movements near the strait. Iranian drones have already successfully entered the airspace over U.S. bases and diplomatic sites in the region. These incursions demonstrate that American facilities are currently vulnerable to precision strikes. With economic leverage gone, both sides are now deploying their most advanced weaponry, making an active shooting war more likely than at any point in the last 40 years. This regional tension became a global crisis during a 90-minute phone call between the Russian and American presidents. Moscow delivered a specific warning to Washington. Any U.S.-led ground operation or aerial invasion of Iran will trigger a direct and severe response from the Russian Federation. Russia is already actively undermining U.S. pressure by acting as the primary global distributor for Iranian oil, ensuring Tehran has a continuous source of revenue despite U.S. sanctions. Any American military action against Iran now carries the immediate risk of a direct military encounter with Russia. The threat of a superpower clash is forcing neighboring Arab states to prioritize their own survival over their traditional alliances. In a major departure from regional policy, the United Arab Emirates has decided to leave the OPEC cartel so it can maximize its own oil production. The UAE plans to pump up to 5 million barrels of oil a day, exporting it via the Fujairah pipeline. This allows them to ship energy from the Gulf of Oman, bypassing the Strait of Hormuz entirely. To protect this trade, the UAE is shifting its security strategy, increasingly relying on advanced missile defense technology, like the Israeli Iron Dome, to secure its borders. This shift by the UAE signals a rift in the Arab coalition, forcing neighboring states to choose between their old economic cartels and these new independent security realities. Despite the presence of the U.S. fleet, the Iranian leadership has stated they will not negotiate on their nuclear enrichment or their ballistic missile development. Their primary demand is the permanent removal of all American military forces from the Middle East. Tehran has declared that it now holds the keys to the Strait of Hormuz and intends to use that control to set the terms for global trade in the region. Iran is no longer just defending its borders. It is actively using the standoff to establish itself as the dominant power in the Middle East. This leaves the United States in a difficult position. Maintaining the blockade is expensive and ineffective, but a direct attack on Iran now violates a Russian red line. As the strategic stalemate continues, thousands of American sailors are left in a high-risk holding pattern, waiting for a diplomatic breakthrough that shows no signs of arriving. Iran has utilized this time to solidify its position within a new, powerful diplomatic and trade triangle with Russia and China. The Strait of Hormuz is no longer a localized bottleneck. Every decision made in these 21 miles now ripples through a complex web of Russian security guarantees and Chinese trade commitments, where one misstep could disrupt the entire global energy market.